I've been doing sales for as long as I can remember, which is 10 years and counting. I enjoy the privilege of having done sales in real estate, co-working, and most recently health technology. So quite a wide array of sales perspective. Sales is a rewarding profession and a very humbling profession. I keep telling this to people. This is one profession where you can't afford to have an ego, because every time you have an ego, the client or the other end makes it a point to sober you and really kill that ego. So if you don't have an ego in sales, it's better. And something else I often talk to folks that I preach to or rather speak to in sales is, if you are a good salesman, you are the most powerful individual in the company. What do I mean by that? A good sales rep can pull any strings to get his or her deal done, whether it's pulling the CEO, CFO, chief of product, chief of marketing, it doesn't matter. If you're good at sales, you are essentially bringing in the money. You are the revenue generator. It's because of you that a company is hitting their quarterly results, right? So you have immense power. Of course, you have that power subject to you being good at sales. So at the end of the session today, let's all endeavor to be better salespeople. This session doesn't restrict itself merely to sales folks. This is a good to know. We all sell in some capacity or the other in life, whether we are actually in sales or not. So let's learn together. The way I've designed my workshop today is I've compared traditional selling / product selling / push selling to consultative selling. That's how I've structured the presentation. So whenever you see, there'll be a comparison, this versus that, this versus that. It essentially means when you're doing consultative selling, you do it this way. When you're doing transactional selling, you do it that way, right? Why this comparison? Because without the comparison, you wouldn't understand and appreciate what consultative selling is. Yes, I believe my screen is visible now. I'm going to start with the first point. Listening versus talking. In the business of sales, it is said that the more you get the customer to talk, the higher the chances of you winning the deal. I'm going to repeat that. The more you get the customer to talk, the higher the chance of you winning the deal. If I had to give you a ratio, sales is 70% listening and 30% talking. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repetition. Sales is 70% listening and 30% talking. In transactional sales, and you've observed this because we've all been victims of transactional sales, when you talk to an insurance agent or when you talk to someone from the bank, they don't care about what you need, what you're looking for, what your aspirations are. They'll just start and say, "Sir, are you looking for this?" And if you say no, they'll ask you, "Why not? There are such great offers. This is a great opportunity. This is lucrative." But they genuinely don't care about what is it that you're looking for, right? So in transactional sales, it's all about the sales rep doing the talking. 80 to 90% of the talking is done by the sales rep, which essentially signifies that they don't give a hoot about what the customer wants. Which is sad, because if they don't hear the customer speak, how will they know what to sell? Does the customer really want the product? Is the customer interested? Enter consultative sales. In consultative sales, your job is to be a silent and loud listener. Your job is to shut up and listen to the client for as long as he's talking. Don't for even 1 second interrupt the client. Very much like I have a pen and a notebook here. The moment I meet the client and the client starts talking, I need to just make notes. Period. Once the client has unloaded himself or herself and I've made the notes, I then go into the process that's called discovery. Discovery is questions, where I ask all the relevant questions I need to arm myself about what the client is looking for. Questions around, for example, so Ronit, who is the incumbent currently, which is who's your partner currently for this package? That's one question. You make a note of that. What is the price that you're paying for it currently? You make a note of that. Then it comes to, why aren't you happy with this incumbent, this partner of yours, and why are you looking at moving to us or to another player? Discovery. Discovery is you essentially asking questions to the client. I like to liken this to the process at a hospital, or rather, when you go to a doctor, right? What does a doctor do? The doctor diagnoses you. How does a doctor diagnose you? The doctor doesn't talk. The doctor is listening. The doctor is asking, Ronit, tell me how you're feeling. And the doctor is making notes, or the doctor is listening. How are you feeling? When did this start? How bad is it? Are you taking any medication? They're just throwing questions after questions after questions after questions. That is called discovery, right? They are talking 20%, 30%, and they're making you talk 70%. That is the essence of consultative selling. Your job is to essentially squeeze all the possible answers, insights, and intel from your clients. You're making a buttload of notes, a lot of notes. And once you've fully understood the problem statement, that is, once the client has stopped talking and the client says, you know what, I'm done, now it's your turn, that's when you jump in with your pitch. The pitch comes much later. First, you understand the problem statement, understand the pain point, understand the aspiration. And that will only come by doing two things: listening, which is first you listen to the client, and second, asking questions, which is discovery. So think of yourself like a doctor that's attempting to diagnose a patient. When you have a patient in front of you, the doctor is asking you a million questions, right? Now, at times the client may get pissed. Why you ask me so many questions? You then assure them, sir, I'm trying to understand your problem better. The deeper I get into your problem, the greater I'll be in a position to solve your problem through my product. That's the idea. So listening 70%, talking 30%. Your pitch needs to come in much later, right? The beauty with listening is once you've understood what the client is looking for, you can then jump in with the solution. My product, for example, the company I work for, I represent a health tech company. We offer 15 odd products. Now, I can't go pitching about all the 15 products. It will take me 1.5 hours. So what I do is I understand what product overarchingly is the client looking for. Once I've understood that, I only double click on that product. I'll give you an example, similar example of listening versus talking. I was with a client last week. It's a tech company. And this, of course, is in a much more advanced stage. We are at the closure stages. And they were apprehensive about paying the entire amount upfront. So we work on a subscription model where whatever the price is, you multiply it by the number of employees, and that is something you pay as upfront. So he was apprehensive about paying us upfront because he was worried, what if I pay you upfront, very much like a gym membership, and I don't use the service? So I understood because I listened to him and I asked him more questions. I understood his problem statement and I then proceeded to solve it. I told him, fair enough. What I'll try and do is, while I've given you a subscription bundle right now, let me separate it. There are areas that you can pay on usage, which is you pay only when you use it. And there are areas that you'll have to pay in the beginning. So let me bifurcate the two. Let me give you a price package where you pay the minimum upfront and the rest on usage. How does that sound? He was satisfied. Of course, not entirely satisfied. A client is never satisfied. They always want more. But he was to some extent satisfied. I listened to him, understood his pain point, and offered a solution accordingly. So that's the beauty of listening. So listening over talking every time. The second one is talk about prospect versus talk about product. Now, again, when it comes to transactional sales, we are all about ourselves, right? If Upender had to be a transactional salesperson, I'm not saying Upender is, he would say, look, I have a tiffin service, I sell Jawari Roti, we offer a subscription model, right? Product, product, product. You're marketing yourself, you're talking about yourself, you're talking about your whole narrative. When it comes to consultative sales, it's not about your product. It's about your prospect. Who's your prospect? Your prospect is your client. It is an offshoot of the first point where you are trying to understand what is the prospect looking for, right? So your product, and I read this recently, your product, your pitch, your value needs to come in the last 15, 20 minutes of a conversation. Sometimes it shouldn't even come in the first conversation. In the first conversation, you should only be talking about the prospect. And the prospect here is twofold. The prospect here is the client himself or herself and the company they represent. You got to be talking about them. Do your research about them. I seen that you raised some funding recently. I seen that your revenue numbers are on top. I see that you have a new CEO. You're talking about the prospect. You're impressing upon them that you care, you know, and you've done your research about them, right? You are not in any way, shape, or form speaking about your product, right? Your product comes later. Your product comes once you established a working relationship with your prospect. Again, this involves a great deal of listening and a great deal of asking questions. And I'll also throw in you doing research about your prospect, right? One is you understanding information by asking them and listening to them. The other is you doing your own bit of information about the prospect. How? By reading up on them in the newspaper, on their website, news articles, interviews, references. You need to really own your prospect. You need to own your customer. So it is of thorough importance that in your first conversation, I would stress first couple of conversation, only talk about the prospect and don't talk about the product. I recognize that it's hard. It's hard because sometimes a lot of clients in the B2B space as well only want to hear from you. When you try and ask them questions, investigate, push them, they're very apprehensive, they're skeptical. And that's okay. There's always exceptions to the norm. But it's our job to try, right? If I launch myself into a pitch like a traditional product sales guy, I will never understand what the client's looking for. I'll never for a moment know what the client needs. So before launching into your pitch, always talk about the prospect. Even if during the call you're not getting much, when you do research ahead of the call, try and figure out what the client is looking for. You'll always know who the competitor is, what is the competitor offering, at what prices. You need to have this information ready so that if the client isn't giving information to you, you can put that information out there and pump some information on the client, right? So very important, talk about prospect and never talk about product. Your product pitch should come towards the end. When I say end, once the client is done talking, like I said earlier, that's when you speak about your product. And when you speak about your product, remember, you're not selling your product. You're speaking about how you can add value to the customer, which is if the customer has a problem. Let me give you an example. So I was on a call with a client a few months ago where her principal concern was mental wellness. She stressed it 4 to 5 times, saying that, the company is going through a merger. We've doubled our sales numbers. We've tripled our manufacturing capacity. Due to all this, my employees are undergoing a lot of stress. The word stress was used 3, 4 times, 4, 5 times. I don't exactly recall. That's the only thing she said. And she spoke for half an hour in a 45-minute call. Right? That's what I figured. I said earlier in the call, I have 15 products that I sell or 15 service lines. Only one service line addressed this client's need, and that was mental wellness, or EAP, like it's called in the corporate world, Employee Assistance Program. So I only spoke about that. I only spoke about mental wellness in depth and how mental wellness, how our product or how our service can address their problem statement, and how we've historically helped ease the burden on employees through our program, right? So I just understood from the client what they're looking for, heard them out, listened, like I said earlier, teased out the problem statement, and only married what part of my product / service addresses their problem statement. So it was not really a pitch as much as it was a doctor consultation where, hey, I'm going through so, and so. Okay, I'm the doctor. I'll tell you, because you're going through all of this, for so long, you should take this. That's how your approach should be, right? The product, the pitch, the solution needs to come at the fag end once you've completely and entirely understood the problem statement, the pain point, and the need. As much as possible, achieve all of this information before launching into your pitch. You will be more informed and you will be more successful. All right. So that is the difference between talking about the prospect versus talking about the product. Helping the clients versus helping yourself. This is, according to me, one of the key differentiators in consultative selling versus traditional and direct selling. If you observed so far, the three slides are presented. On the left, which is what is written first, is what you're supposed to be doing, which is consultative selling. On the right is what you're not supposed to be doing, which is indirect selling, right? Is someone doing that or? Yeah, okay. So helping the client versus helping yourself. So helping the client is what you're supposed to be doing. Helping yourself is what people do in the direct sales space. Now, let's understand this. What is helping the client? Helping the client is helping solve their problem. What is helping yourself? Helping yourself for a salesperson is simple, you hitting your target. I'll give you a very simple example. And before that, I'll also say, unfortunately, most of the times, helping the client and helping ourselves are never aligned. It's like the Gokhale Bridge in Mumbai, misaligned by 2 meters, if you know what I'm saying. The client wants something, I want something, and that is a world apart. There's always a distance, and in sales, it's our job to bridge that gap. So I'll give you an example. There's a client of mine who we've closed, and this client has been telling me that I want to launch this in December. He's been telling me that since December now. Because he's been telling me that since December, I've projected it in my pipeline. I've been telling my boss, I'm going to close this in December. The client then moved it to Jan. I then told my boss, I'm going to close this in Jan. The client then moved it to Feb. I'm then telling my boss Feb. Then the client says March. Then I tell my boss March. And then finally April. So what's happening here? Helping myself is closing the deal as soon as possible. That's what any sales rep wants to do. That's the goal. Close your quarter on a high, close your month on a high. But the client doesn't want to do that. The client doesn't care about your targets, your goals, your commission. The client cares about what their management cares about. Now, clearly in my client's case here, while they did want to go live in the month of December, for some reason they didn't achieve consensus from management, and that kept pushing until March and April. Now, I can't help it, right? I have an obligation to both my client and myself. I have to help my client, but I can't have that at the expense of helping myself. So it's very important to bridge that gap. Now just imagine this. What if I pushed my client? What if I pushed my client and said, sir, you told me it'll happen in December. We are sitting in January. Close the deal now. The client will get mad. I'll antagonize the client and I'll probably lose the client because that tone is helping myself. What is helping the client? Helping the client is saying, sir, help me understand what will help us get across the line. How can we close this quicker? Help me understand that. You committed to me that we'll close this in December. I'm sure you've committed to your management as well. We're sitting in February right now. We're sitting in March. So how do we close this? And I've also committed to my management, which is fine. I'll manage them. But how will you manage your management? You've been saying this. You'll close this in December. Try and empathize with the client. Right? So what I'm doing here is I'm helping the client while trying to help myself. Remember, helping the client versus helping yourself will never be on the same spectrum. Never. 80% of the time, you'll have to make a choice. But it's your responsibility to bridge that gap, which is, if you can help the client by helping yourself, that's the goal, right? So I'll pause here and ask you all if you all have any questions. Again, similar to Vijay, if you all have any questions, you all can put it on the chat. If you want to speak up, happy to pull you up in the speaker section and hear you. Helping the client versus helping yourself is an important one because helping yourself is merely hitting your targets. But with helping the client, it's not about hitting targets. They don't care about your targets. They care about what their management cares about. So bridging that gap, as I said, is hard. Okay, Upendra, we have strong IoT geospatial product with technical. How to find B2B customers in US, Europe? Got it. So, Upendra, here I would say, okay, so the first things first is you need to hire an experienced sales rep, a head of sales that has served these markets. Look for a sales rep that has sold a similar product. If your product is revolutionary, new, find a sales head that has sold a product, a SaaS software product or a similar product in the US and Europe market, because that market will be familiar. And because that market will be familiar, they'll have a database. Once you've tapped a head of sales, you've tapped a database, you've tapped a strategy. From then on, your journey will be downhill. But your job will be to A, find someone that has sold a product, and B, sold a product in that market. That will really help you on your journey. When it comes to tools, there are several tools on the market today. We've got Dun & Bradstreet. They have some excellent lead generation tools. We've got Fundu Data. Then LinkedIn also has Sales Navigator and has lead generation. So quite a few. I would suggest when you hire this head of sales, he or she will have all of this knowledge. Of course, they'll charge you a fortune on their salary, but they will at least open up a virgin market for you and you'll have an understanding. So that's how I'll suggest you going about a GTM strategy, a go-to-market strategy. Hire a head of sales that's been there, done that with the product and in that market, and your journey will be downhill from there. Downhill as in it'll be a smooth sail. All right. To the next one, soft touch versus hard touch. This is one of my favorites. One of my favorites because in sales, whenever we think of sales, we're always thinking about someone that is pushing. Is it? Yeah. They're always thinking of someone that's pushing. What do I mean pushing? Sir, kab loge? Sir, lo na? Offer acha hai na? That's pushing. So whenever you've met an insurance agent, a real estate agent, a carrier agent, they're always pushing. It's hard touch, right? And it's very annoying. I'll give you an example. I was at the barbershop yesterday and I was getting my hair done. I don't have too much hair, but whatever little I have, I was getting it done. I do that every week. And the barber that I go to usually, he was like, sir, आप एक आज massage कर लो ना. I said, यार मुझे काम है, मैं अगली बार आऊँगा. He's like, sir, कर लो ना, हम पूछते नहीं हैं. And there were people around in the barbershop. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, I don't want to do it, man. I have a lot on my plate. I'll come back another time. But he kept asking, sir, कर लो ना, हम पूछते नहीं हैं ना, sir. जब पूछते करना चाहिए ना. Hard touch. Nobody likes being pushed. Nobody likes being nudged. Nobody likes being quoted, right? Even if the ball is in your court, you've got to be soft touch. What is soft touch? Soft touch is you following up very respectfully. Soft touch is saying, so if I'm selling something to Upender and I'm done with the demo and I've shared my prices, I will ask Upender, now that we are done with everything, when would be a good time for me to follow up with you? Upender says a month's time. I said, okay, Upender, we are sitting on the 9th of March. I will connect with you the 8th of April. I will then call Upender on the 8th of April and ask him, hey, Upender, we spoke. You remember, we've been exchanging emails. We met, blah, blah, blah. You would ask me to follow up with you on the 8th of April because you said by that time you'll have socialized the idea with your organization and you'll have an update for me. So here I am seeking an update. That is soft touch. That you're very respectfully following up. You are honoring someone's boundaries. It doesn't mean you're going soft on someone, mind you. You are still following up, right? You're being aggressive with your follow-ups. You're dropping the email. The only difference is you're being respectful. I asked Upender, how long will you take to make a decision? Upender says, I'll take a month. I said, theek hai. I will follow up with you in a month's time. And of course, keep in touch with Upender over the month because a month's a long time. He might forget me. Upendra's talking to a lot of other sales reps. But after a month, I will call Upendra and I'll ask him, sir, we spoke a month ago. And if you remember, you told me to speak to you in a month's time. So here I am. That is soft touch. Being respectful. Not saying, hey, Upendra, where are we? Hey, Upendra, when are we going to close it? That's very annoying and that's very unprofessional. No one likes a sales rep that is nagging you, right? So be very respectful. What I've learned, you can follow up, and subtle follow up is, or soft touch follow up is follow up on email. Your email follow up week on week is very respectful, and you don't even need to follow up. You can say, "Hi, Upender, I hope you've been keeping well. Have a great week ahead." No follow up. What I'm doing is soft touch. I'm staying in Upender's mind, in Upender's space, in Upender's consciousness. Now, Upender knows who Jeevan is, what company Jeevan represents, and how persistent and hungry Jeevan is. That's what Upender needs to know. I'm telling Upender every week, have a great week, Upender. Happy Mahashivratri, Merry Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And only after 1 month do I give Upender a call. That is soft touch. But to build on that soft touch, you need to be in Upender's consciousness. All right? So that's the difference between soft touch and hard touch. In consultative sales, never push. Never, never, never push. Your job is to exhibit the platform, exhibit the tool, exhibit the service and product to the customer, and then wait for the customer to get back. That being said, it doesn't mean you don't follow up. You follow up, but you follow up respectfully, professionally, and with boundaries. So that's the difference between soft and hard touch. Any questions from anyone, you can even drop them in the comments. Upender, did you have something to say? I seen that you came on screen. No, I'm going to assume that's a no. We have a customer where we are stuck with payment, but they also have good order, which I want to take. We're following with them for payment for 4 months. We're pushing to pay how to break this barrier. Vijay, I would suggest you go and sit in this customer's office. When I say you, maybe not necessarily you, your time is valuable. Have someone go and sit in his office every day. The easiest way to get something out of someone is by shaming them, by embarrassing them. How do you shame and embarrass them? By embarrassing yourself. जाके ऑफिस में बैठो, चाय पियो, बिस्किट पियो, ग्रीन टी पियो, बैठो ऑफिस में. जब तक आपका चेक नहीं आता, ऑफिस में बैठो. What this does, it signals that, hey, I really want my money, but I'm being respectful, right? So that's what I'd suggest, and that's what I would be told by my bosses. If you're not getting business from someone, and if you're not getting your check from someone, go and sit in their office. You're embarrassing yourself, but you're also embarrassing them. When the reception asks, when the people around ask, this guy comes every day, at some point they'll be like, let me just give them the cash. That's one. Not ideal, right? Second, I would suggest is you have a strong contract with them where they have to pay you within 45 days or 30 days. And if it extends beyond that, there's a penalty involved. Because 4 months is a long time. That's a long credit cycle, right? And we need to pay salaries. We need to run our business. 4 months is a long time. So the second thing I'll say is go into definitive contracts with them where they have to pay within 30 to 45 days. That's how it is with MSMEs. You have to pay an MSME within 30 to 45 days of raising the invoice. Now it's become 30 days. All right. We are in the service industry. How we can follow up on sales, services, or prospects? Sundar, this follow-up process remains the same. Be very respectful. Ask the customer when would they like to be followed up on, and you follow that. It's as simple as that. Don't follow up at your whim and fancy. Don't do that. Ask the customer, sir, मैं आपको कब call करूं? And you call the customer then, because then you have context. Then Sundar, you're saying, sir, you asked me to call you at 3 p.m. on Wednesday, so here I am. And then the customer can't disconnect your call. Even then we have customers that disconnect. But the point is, when you have context, you have a foot in the door. So follow that process. So Upender, my answer will remain the same. You need to get FaceTime with this vendor. Whoever this client is that isn't paying you, you need to go to him and have an honest conversation, right? Man to man, woman to woman. Sir, मेरा पैसा अटका है, दे दो ना. क्या मतलब क्यों अटका है? आपको कुछ चाहिए, कुछ हो रहा है? Have an honest confrontational conversation with him, and have some guy be in the office every day so that they know how much this money means to you, and you are happy to be embarrassed, ashamed, and even spend an entire resources time sitting in your office. Do that. It's your money at the end of the day. If you have to follow up a million times, follow up. Aapka paisa hai, aur aapka hak hai. So that'll be my answer. All right, moving to the last slide. This is my favorite, all-time favorite, because it summarizes consultative selling versus direct selling. Consultative selling is like a marriage. It's not a one-stop shop, right? What I mean here is you are not selling the client something only once, but you are going to sell it to them for a lifetime. You are hoping that they renew with you for years and years and years. And because of your marriage like relationship, they will also refer customers. They'll be happy to be cross sold and upsold on everything. So that's how you need to treat a relationship, like a marriage, not like you are dating someone or a one night stand, right? Not like अगर आप नहीं हो तो कोई और मिल जाएगा. No. If that is your approach, that is exactly how your clients will also treat you. Clients treat us like that anyway. There are too many competitors in the market for the same product. There are a minimum of 5 stakeholders or 5 parties selling it. So if you don't treat your customer right, if you treat them like a one night stand or a date, looking to move to the next one and they don't work out, they will sniff it and they will rip you apart. So always treat a customer like a marriage. What is a marriage? A long-term relationship. Don't look at this from a short-term standpoint. Look at it from a long-term standpoint. What should you do from your end to breed a long-term, happy, and sustainable relationship? That's what a marriage is. What happens in dating is we overpromise and we underdeliver. I will give you this, I will give you that, so I'll give you this discount. And once they actually come with us, they realize we've given none of that. Right? That's what happens in insurance. I remember when we bought a car for my parents some time back, the car salesman at Maruti Suzuki sold us the moon and the stars. But he merely was able to achieve the sky because he missold us on so many things. He missold us on so many things. He said, I'll give you floodlights. He didn't give it to us. He said, I'll give you a voucher. He didn't give it to us. But we bought the car eventually, but we were left with a sour taste in our mouth. If you didn't want to give us, why do you incentivize us? You incentivize us. You told us I'll give you X, Y, and Z, but you never gave that to us. Now I'm never going to trust you. And you anyway never trusted me or never cared about me. I was just another customer that you were trying to achieve your goals and not help the client achieve his goals. So short-term relationship, right? If you breed short-term relationships, it's going to end up poorly, right? I'm never going to respect that guy or, for that matter, sadly, any car salesperson today because I've stereotyped them. But if that same person were to give me the right information, that would have been a marriage, a long-term relationship. If I knew someone looking to buy a car, I would refer that person, right? That's the beauty. When you go long-term, you're really investing in yourself and in your relationship, in your future pipeline. So keep that in mind. Whenever you are talking to anyone, sales, non-sales, have a marriage approach, long-term relationship. Don't look at it from a one-night stand. Okay, if this guy doesn't work out, I'll go to someone else, or I'll fool him, I'll missell him, and then sell him off. And so what if he has a problem with it? I don't care. Don't do that. Because when things come to bite you in the bottom, it bites you hard. And the market is a small market and people talk. So treat every relationship like a marriage, a long-term association. So that is dating versus marriage. And that was my last slide. Thank you so much for joining my consultative selling workshop in collaboration with the Juno School of Business. Thank you so much for joining in. I look forward to staying connected with all of you on LinkedIn. So happy to stay connected, have a conversation, and keep in touch on LinkedIn. Until then, stay safe, have a great weekend, and continue selling.